We had to wage a constant war in the field of terrorism financing. As you know, the same way that financing for the government was needed, financing for the LTT was also needed. So they raised funds all over the world. They had many methods by which funds were being raised. They had many methods by which funds were transmitted. There were many disguises, many fronts that were used to channel all these funds. Because if we had to spend so much of money and we knew how much we were spending, they also did spend that, and they raised that through various means. Many were illegal, credit card scams, drug trafficking, hostage taking, ransom money, coercion, raising capital in various capitals of the world. All these were resorted to by them, and they raised funds for this effort. We also had to face well-disguised but serious economic interventions as well. The tentacles of the LTT were manifold, and those were right across the world. And they used many of these tentacles to put pressure on Sri Lanka, to ensure that we will not be able to move economically in an easy manner. So there were huge amount of tensions. I have just given two examples. The threat of withdrawal of the GSP Plus was always overhung. And many knew it was an unwritten secret that it was being pushed by certain groups which wanted to ensure that Sri Lanka was kept always in a state of uncertainty. We faced that. We were able to overcome that. And we ensured that any impact of such a situation we were able to meet with the challenge and ensure a peaceful transition from a GSP Plus situation to a non-GSP Plus situation. We also had direct interventions, such as delaying certain supports that we were entitled to. But we also were able to ensure that we have our own methods employed in order to ensure that we can meet with such situations as well. We had to face some very serious misinformation campaigns during the period of these operations. I believe we are also facing such now. I'm sure the Secretary to the President will also concur with me when I say that. We have to deal with tremendous amounts of misinformation campaigns, well-funded, well-executed, with many. Sometimes we do not really know that where the origin of these things are, but it happens in such a well-planned manner that it's very difficult to even figure out as to from where these efforts are being channeled. So even during the operation times, we had direct misinformation campaigns about our economy. Very regular. There were very regular statements, not only by the foreign media, but even locally. And I used to sometimes joke by saying, every 3 months somebody says that during the next 3 months, the economy is going to collapse, that it's going to be finished. So we used to deal with that. And we had to directly deal with it many times. And after some time, the credibility of those efforts was waning, because we used to show how many times similar stories have been stated by several people on a consistent basis. And I think we also might reflect on some of the stories that sometimes can be used effectively in certain quarters to bring about results which we do not really want to see happening. And these are cleverly planned efforts at various times, and we had to face those in our own way. We also had to deal with the significant burden. Although we don't really like to use the word burden, it was a huge impact on our economy. We had to maintain investor confidence. We had to at the same time deal with the intense human suffering. We had to deal with the political uncertainty. I think Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa in his address elaborated on many of those features. We had to also allocate resources which we could have very easily have allocated for other purposes. Productivity losses. Suddenly when you have bombs going off, you used to have serious productivity losses. Destruction of infrastructure which we had to rebuild. All that was done, and that meant we had to be on the ball all the time. At the central bank, we ourselves suffered a bomb attack long before 9/11 took place. 41 of our own staff members were killed instantaneously. 19 of them were in our library, and they died without even knowing what hit them. 19 of them are still blind. And these are all extraordinarily talented officers who were lost to the country. At the same time, more than 90 people were killed. Very similar attack to the 9/11. A truck laden with 500 kilograms of explosives was rammed into the central bank. That's what happened. But it took the world 2,050 days before they realized what kind of a trauma you encounter in this type of a bomb blast. We suffered through that, and we had many, many other bomb blasts also, 9/11 type, before the world recognized that these suicide bombing has to stop. We had to face suicide attacks at the airport, in railways, in public transport, in massive numbers. I think it was spoken of earlier. We suffered a massive human cost, and we also incurred very heavy indirect cost because of the imbalances that it created in our economy, the loss of opportunities for growth, and already when we look at the post-war period, we find that it would have cost our nation at least 1 to 2% each year by way of growth lost as a result of the debilitating war that we had to encounter. But finally, by 19th of May, it was all over. And this note that we issued to commemorate that occasion signifies very aptly what really took place. The forces ensured that we were able to breathe freely again. And then, through the leadership of His Excellency the President, we are once again now able to move on our journey towards prosperity. And the journey towards prosperity in Sri Lanka is reflected in the Punkalasa, shows prosperity, plenty, and that's what we are now moving towards. Let me also just take 2-3 minutes to say as to what this entire operation was all about from an economic point of view. His Excellency the President gave very clear instructions to those who were managing the economy. I was privileged to be one of them, to say that in order to ensure that we have a successful operation on the war front, that 3 efforts were key. Firstly, the development activities. The development activities had to continue unabated. If we had to tell the country, look, we are stopping development because we are now fighting a war, that would have been disastrous.